We go to the movies for entertainment, maybe to get away from the reality of our world, and just for a few moments we escape that reality and enter a twilight zone, if you will, of adventure, romance, and the like. But is it possible someone is trying to tell you something? Is there full disclosure being made on a silver screen? Are you aware of the message, or have you been oblivious? Following are movie reviews on The Wizard of Oz and the Matrix movies. They are presented herein to allow you to understand really what has happened and what to understand. The Wizard of Oz, the coded movie of what really happened to America by Robert Kelly. Just as you can read between the glory lines, or excuse me, between the gory lines in the newspaper on any given day in America, you can discover clues and truths slipped in by the powers that be. If you look hard enough as to what is actually going on, such notice can also be found in somewhat lighter fare, the movies. As you well know, the movies have become the national pastime of entertainment. Millions go to the movies. VHS tapes and DVDs fill the rest of the gap. The storyline, topics, and time frames vary as to the manuscripts and the vision of the directors. Such a movie was The Wizard of Oz, an allegory for the new state of affairs in America in the 1930s following the stock market crash and the factual bankruptcy of the United States government immediately following. The Wizard of Oz movie is not just a movie for children, though perceived today it is, and it has become a national icon of an historical nature replayed every year on television just for the children. What is missed by most is the symbolism in the movie, in almost every character and aspects of the set and so-called special effects and props back then. After reading this article and then seeing the movie again, it will never be the same to you or your children. The setting was Kansas, Heartland, America, the geographical center of the USA. In comes the twister, the tornado. An example, whirling confusion of the stock market crash that left everybody economically dizzy. It signified the theft of America's gold, the coming U.S. bankruptcy, the Great Depression. The tornado whisked Dorothy and Toto up into a new artificial dreamlike dimension somewhere above the solid ground of Kansas. When Dorothy awakes, she finds herself in the land of Oz. Dorothy comments to her little companion Toto, "I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore." That's right. After the bankruptcy, Kansas was no longer just plain old Kansas. It was now, in parentheses, KS, an artificial corporate venue of the bankrupt United States, newly established federal territory, part of the federal zone, and Dorothy and Toto were in this state now. On her journey in this unfamiliar land, Dorothy meets up with three unusual characters, each having certainly a different problem or aspect as portrayed on the silver screen. But their true identity has been decoded, and it follows. The first was the Scarecrow, a man of straw, affront, and he identified his straw man persona for Dorothy. Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking. Of course, I'm not bright about doing things. And in this case, and in his classic song, "If I Only Had a Brain," the Scarecrow straw man succinctly argued, sorry, is a weird word, "I'd unravel every riddle for every individual," when in parentheses it says individual, "in trouble or in pain." Today, in light of redemption, we would translate it as, Once one discovers that his straw man exists, all political and legal mysteries, complexities, and confusions are resolved or understood. And once one takes legal title control to this straw man, he becomes the authorized representative of the straw man to accept and discharge or settle all commercial authorized representation of the straw man. Oh, sorry, I read the same line again. let me just do that again. It says, he becomes authorized representative of the straw man to accept and discharge or settle all commercial affairs as in Oz, the new commercial world, aka the Matrix. Because the straw man has no brains and no hands and fingers to grasp a pen to write the check, so to speak, to pay the fine, fee, tax, or debt. The second character was the Tin Man, or T.I.N. man, also identified as tax identification number. The Tin Man was a hollow man of metal, a vessel, a vehicle, a newly created commercial code word for the straw man, just like the Scarecrow. The Tin Man had no brain and no heart. Both were artificial persons. One of the definitions of tin in Webster's dictionary is counterfeit. The Tin Man also represented the mechanical and heartless aspect of commerce and commercial law. Just like they say in the mafia, nothing personal, it's just business. And in another profession similar to the mafia, the business of lawyering, they have the attitude that it's nothing personal, business is business, in parentheses it says. The heartless Tin Man also carried an axe, the traditional symbol for God. An example, modern commercial law. In earlier dominant civilizations, including fascist states, in other words, or in the words of the Tin Man, expressing relief after Dorothy had oiled his rusty points and parts, he said, "I've held the axe up for ages." The word ace is etymologically related to the word axe. And in the deck of cards, the only one above the king is the ace. An example, God, one of the axes, or one of the Axis powers of World War II, Italy, was a fascist state. And the symbol for fascism is the fasces, a bundle of rods with an axe bound up in the middle and its blade projecting. The fasces may be found on the reverse of the American Mercury head dime. In Roman deity, Mercury was the god of commerce. It can also be found on the wall behind and on each side of the speaker's podium. In the U.S. Senate, each guided fasces is approximately 6 feet in height, and at the base of the seal of the U.S. Senate are 2 crossed faces. The third character that Dorothy met was the Cowardly Lion, or King of Beasts. As the most feared of all animals in the jungle, was lacking courage. The lion is symbolic of the once fearless American people who have since lost their courage. Yes, there are a lot of hot talkers out there. Just listen to your local radio talk shows. American men love to talk, but none have the courage to do a damn thing. The American people are scared of the corporate federal system and local revenue collectors, which are the cops, and the judges in their so-called courtrooms, tribunals of justice or commerce. After your first few go-arounds with the Just Us system, believing there was justice in the courts, you probably lost some of your courage too. And you may have not known it, but the IRS has been dealing with only your straw man, the debtor, strictly under the laws of commerce, and they are just like the Tin Man, which is heartless. After Dorothy and her 3 companions made their way to Oz, they had learned that they had to go see the wizard. To find the wizard, they had to just follow the yellow brick road. Gold is known as yellow bricks and are melted into ingots. All one has to do is follow the trail of America's stolen gold, and you will find the thief who stole it. In the beginning of the movie, the wizard was represented by the traveling mystic, Professor Marvel, whom Dorothy encountered when she ran away with Toto. His macabre shingle touted that he was acclaimed by the crowned head of Europe, past, present, and future. Boy, that Professor Marvel must have been a regular wizard to be acclaimed by the future crowned heads of Europe before they were even crowned. Before the bankers stole America, they had long since disempowered the Christian monarchies of Europe and looted their kingdoms. Maybe this Professor Marvel fellow knew something about the future that the other folks didn't. With a human skull peering down from its painted perch above the door inside the wagon, or inside his wagon, the good professor lectured Dorothy of the priests of Isis and Osiris and the days of the pharaohs of Egypt. When Dorothy and her new friends emerged from the forest, were they elated to see the Emerald City before them, only a short jaunt away. Then came the Wicked Witch of the West, desperate for her ruby slippers that Dorothy was wearing, as they held special powers. A significant point here is that in the original book, The Wizard of Oz, published in 1900, 39 years earlier, the slippers were not red, but silver. In the first cut of the movie, the slippers were silver, but were changed to red to be more colorful. At the time of the book was written, America had still had all of its gold and silver. The value of the ounce of gold was set at 15 ounces of silver, with silver being the more plentiful of the two metals and generally known as poor man's gold. Just as the silver slippers carried Dorothy, America's stockpile of silver and gold backing the currency carried the country to a position of preeminence throughout the world at that time. But as mentioned, when the movie came out in 1939, the slippers were not silver but red. Between 1916 and 1933, most of America's gold was rounded up by the privately owned Federal Reserve banks and shipped off to the Fed owners in England and Germany. The reason for this was that the Federal Reserve notes could be redeemed in for gold, and the use of Federal Reserve notes carried an interest penalty that could only be paid in gold. The American people were defrauded into trading their gold for worthless paper with green ink on it. Our previous currency, United States notes, carried no such interest requirements, but such was the bargain that came with the Federal Reserve notes. The reason JFK was murdered was because he was reissuing United States notes interest-free. Go to any coin store and see or buy a 1963 U.S. Not Federal Reserve note. When the bankruptcy was declared in 1933, Americans were required, in parentheses as misdirected, to turn in all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates by May 1st, known as May Day, the birthday of communism in Bavaria in 1776, the birthday of the IRS, and celebrated worldwide as the International Workers' Holiday, a holy day to the wizard and his tribe. Talking to people who were alive at that time, you may find out that the general sentiment toward such thievery bordered on a second revolution. Maybe it was just too much of a clue or too much salt in a wound for Dorothy to be skipping down the yellow brick road in a pair of silver slippers, so that for whatever reason, a color less likely to annoy or provoke was selected: red. With regard to the choice of the ruby or red-colored slippers, red's primary significance, at least on documents and the like, is that it is the color of blood, as in flesh and blood, and symbolizes a living, breathing man or woman. An example, non-corporate, non-artificial. The color red also have been chosen for the related tie to the International Banking Federal Reserve founder, the Rothschilds, aka Red Shield, the family of the Rothschilds. It does signify private as opposed to public. Your new Social Security card has a red serial number on the reverse, signifying the private side bond account attached to the public side of your straw man's Social Security account. For postal employees, a red sticker, registered mail, means personal accountability, private. All other mail carries limited liability, public. It is likely that the ruby slippers symbolize the American people with blood in their veins and opposed to citizens of the United States, straw men with the counterfeit corporate blood of blue-black ink on a birth certificate. No matter their color in the movie, the Wicked Witch of the West wanted those slippers at any cost and had to move fast before Dorothy and her crew could make it to the Emerald City. The witch's tactic was to cover the countryside with poppy flowers, or poppies, the source of heroin, opium, and morphine, symbolically drugging them, the American people, into unconsciousness, and then just waltz in and snatch the slippers. In other words, the best way to subjugate the American people and boost the goods was to dull their senses by getting them hooked on drugs. Note, LSD was created the same year, 1939, by Albert Hofmann. The poppies, drugs worked on Dorothy, the lion, and Toto, our flesh and blood friends, but had no effect on the Scarecrow or the Tin Man, the artificial entities. The two of them cried out for help, and Glenda, the good witch of the north, answered their prayers with a blanket of snow, aka cocaine, a stimulant nullifying the narcotic effect of the poppy's opium on Dorothy, the lion, and Toto. At this writing, aside from marijuana, the two most available drugs on the streets of America are heroin and cocaine in the various forms. As they all scampered toward Emerald City, the city of green, Federal Reserve notes, the new fiat money or money by decree, we heard the Munchkins singing on the glory of the wizard's creation. You're out of the woods, you're out of the dark, you're out of the night. Stepped into the sun, stepped into the light. Keep straight ahead for most glorious place on the face of the earth or the stars. The foregoing jingle abounds with illuminous Luciferian symbols and metaphors, darkness and light. The Wicked Witch of the West made her home in round medieval watchtower ancient symbol of the Knights Templar of Freemasonry, who are given to practicing witchcraft and also credited with as the originators of modern banking circa 1099 AD. The Wicked Witch of the West was also dressed in black, the color symbolizing the planet Saturn, sacred icon of the Knights Templar, and the color of choice of judges and priests of their robes. Who was the Wicked Witch of the West? Remember, the first part of the film, her counterpart was Elmira Gulch, who, according to Aunt Em, owned half the country. Miss Gulch alleged that Dorothy's dog, Toto, had bitten her. She came to the farm with an order from the sheriff demanding that they surrender Toto to her custody. Aunt Em was not immediately cooperative and answered Miss Gulch's allegations that Toto had bitten her with, he's really gentle. With gentle people, that is. Could gentle really mean Gentile? When Miss Gulch defied them and withhold Toto to go against the law, dear old Aunt Em was relegated to pushing the party line for Big Brother. She dutifully succumbed to the pressure and counseled Dorothy reluctantly. Does it sound like most American people? We can't go against the law, Dorothy. I'm afraid poor Toto will have to go. When Dorothy refuses to surrender Toto, Miss Gulch lashed out. If you don't hand over that dog, I'll bring a damn suit that'll take your whole farm. Today, 70% of all attorneys in the world reside in the West, America. To be exact, 95% of all lawsuits in the world are filed under U.S. jurisdiction. The Wicked Witch of the West and Miss Gulch, dear friends, represent judges and attorneys. An example, the American legal system, including the attorney-run U.S. Congress. They are the executioners and primary henchmen for the transferring of all wealth in America from the people over to the banks and the government. The Wicked Witch of the West wanted the silver slippers, the precious metals, and her counterpart, Miss Gulch, wanted to take Toto. What does the word Toto mean in attorney language? In Latin, it means everything. Dorothy and her three companions finally made their way to the Emerald City. They sought the audience before the wizard, were taken inside, and brought before the wizard's gigantic image speaking in a loud voice. behind glass, similar to smoke and mirrors. Dorothy and the gang fell for the wizard's illusion, power, and commands in the beginning, but it was little Toto who, by his instinct, pulled the curtain back to expose the fraud of the wizard a front man for the wizard, an agent for the fiction, the wizard the people feared. The wizard, this gigantic image speaking in a loud voice behind glass, could very well be symbolized. With the advent of television, the power of the government speaking lies before the people via television. Because if the people saw it on TV, it must be true. And of course, the people will believe their government, won't they? Remember the drugs? But Dorothy and the others soon wised up and revealed the wizard for what he was, a confidence man. Then, when asking the agents, administrative agencies, about helping the Scarecrow straw man, about getting a brain, he gave the straw man a piece of paper and a diploma from a university. The wizard also cited the land of E pluribus unum, which is Latin for one out of many, an example converting the many into the New World Order, or Novus Ordo Seclorum, a Latin phrase placed on the American dollar bill shortly after its bankruptcy. He also proudly confessed that he was born and bred in the heart of the Western wilderness, an old Kansas man himself. He gave the Tin Man a ticker, a clock, to sound like a heart, but it was not. And the lion he gave a medal to signify that the lion had courage. These all, of course, were mere trinkets in the land of Oz, a fictional world, of course. The bankers did pretty well in Europe, but as the wizard pointed out, they made a killing in the Western wilderness. An example, America, with the theft of the American gold, labor, and property, quoting John D. Rockefeller, grateful and responsive rural folk who populated the country at that time. When Dorothy asked Glenda, the good witch of the North, representing honesty, good faith, and Christianity, for help in getting back to Kansas, Glenda replied, "You don't need to be helped. You've always had the power to go back to Kansas. Just click your heels together 3 times, 3 days, truth and lending, and say there's no place like home." Translation, you've always had the right and the power to reclaim your sovereignty. You just forgot or were never taught that you or the American people have such power. The Oregon Bill of Rights says the people have all power. Since the people are the true sovereign power, then it is only necessary to wake up from the dumbed down, drug-like effect of the powers that be that they've had over you and the American people as to that power and position, and then exercise it. The actual reclaiming of your sovereignty, the remedy in today's bankrupt commercial world, is a process including a Uniform Commercial Code-1 form to the Secretary of the State and a chargeback invoice with the bill of exchange to the Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, wherein you can take commercial control of your straw man with the tax identification number and charge up your UCC contract trust account so that you can discharge debts of your debtor. Americans have intimate first-hand knowledge of the heartless mechanics of the laws of commerce, religiously applied by the example of the unregistered foreign agents of the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, accounting firm and collection agency for the private Federal Reserve Bank, was constituted under the UCC at its inception in 1954 and has been operating strictly in that realm ever since. And as a side note, how was the Wicked Witch destroyed? By accident. A bucket of water, the true substance of all things good and healthy. Simple water, H2O, destroyed the evil just like the O in ozone destroys virus and bacteria, cancer. Did the oxygen and the water destroy the evil witch? You may have wondered what the meaning is behind words in the title, The Wizard of Oz. Look them up in a dictionary. Like almost everything else, it's right out there in the open for you to see if you will just look closely enough. One definition of wizard is a very clever or skillful person. Oz is an abbreviation of onza. Onza, the Italian word for ounce or ounces, the unit of measurement of gold and silver and other precious metals. No matter how large the quality or the quantity of the gold or silver being discussed, the amount is always expressed in ounces rather than hundreds of tons rather than hundreds of tons of gold, it's so many millions of ounces of gold. As attested by the factual history of this country, the Wizard of Oz was the Wizard of Ounces. And who took the gold back, and who took the gold that backed the American money? Why, the bankers and the lawyers working for the foreign principal, the private Federal Reserve, constituting the 20 Class A stockholders being mostly private bankers, all orchestrated and greased by politicians then and still today, only because it is not the mindset of politicians today to correct the matter and put full and absolute power over the control, creation, minting, and putting into circulation of United States money backed by gold, substance, value. What everyone has to understand is that as things are today, the commercial system as in place is better for everyone, just as long as everyone understands the program. Maybe the Wizard of Oz back then was the introduction to the program as to the monetary condition and changes in America. It just appeared that no one gave full disclosure to the American people, not only of the change, but how to operate in this new commercial world where they all have real value, where all the real value was removed and all that was put in its place was commercial paper. Everything worked out for Dorothy, the American people. In the end, she made it home, meaning there is remedy in law. It's there. It is just encoded and disguised and camouflaged. Fortunately, the code has been cracked, and there is a way home, just like in the movie. Like Dorothy said, there's no place like home, and there isn't. There's nothing like sovereign for a sovereign people. When we have commercial remedy in the redemption process, you will continue to be conned by the confidence men and believe the wizard's words coming out of that box, the smoke and the mirrors called the TV? Or will you wise up like Dorothy did and look behind the scenes to recognize the scheme? Will you rise above the occasion and obtain the knowledge to become a secured party creditor, private banker, and sovereign to take your place among others who are above the government, instead of being that debtor slave on the plantation, living your life in debt and servitude? It's your choice. Dorothy did it a long time ago to show the American people and maybe the children the way, how to do it, and that it can be done. Now go rent or buy the movie and see it again for the first time with your eyes wide open. For all intents and purposes, there are only debtors and creditors in America. No law, only the law of contracts and agreements and commercial paper. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the money trail. All right, the next part is going to be about the movie The Matrix. We're going to continue this in a separate upload.